Good morning. A pleasant Wednesday morning to you. It's Wednesday, February 9, 2022. Welcome to the banquet hall here at the Jamaica House Complex, the Office of the Prime Minister in Kingston, Jamaica. My name is Naomi Francis, the Press Secretary. This morning we're pleased to resume our weekly post-cabinet media briefing. And today, our minister, the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of, well, the Office of the Prime Minister is a ministry in and of itself, here with responsibility for information, the Honourable Robert Nesta Morgan will be giving us the cabinet briefs over the last 4 weeks, as well as taking questions from members of the media. May I also take time out to welcome our Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Audrey Sewell, and other members of the Office of the Prime Minister who are here as well online. Once again, we are streaming live on all major platforms, and of course, we are live on PBCJ. Thank you so much for joining us. And now let me welcome the Minister with Responsibility for Information, the Honourable Robert Nesta Morgan.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Thank you to members of the media who are online and also members of our support team from the Jamaica Information Service and the Office of the Prime Minister. We will go directly into the decisions of Cabinet. The National Irrigation Commission, Cabinet has given approval for the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, or the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, to license the National Irrigation Commission for a period of 30 years, subject to affirmative resolution, and it gave further approval for the promulgation of legislation to validate all acts executed in good faith by the NIC as the Irrigation Authority in the absence of the requisite license pursuant to Section 4 of the Irrigation Act for the period commencing 11th of July 2021 to the date of gazetting of a new order to duly license the NIC, to indemnify the NIC and all its officers against liability. Cabinet also gave approval for the inclusion of the construction of the St. Catherine North Police Divisional Headquarters in the Public Sector Investment Program for the provision of a fiscal space to support this implementation. The estimated cost of the construction of the headquarters is approximately $1.8 billion, inclusive of $107 million for the cost of the land. The construction period was estimated to be 18 months and was anticipated to commence, and is anticipated to commence in the financial year 2022-2023. Cabinet also gave approval for the Housing Agency of Jamaica Limited to remove 100 one-bedroom starter housing units from the Shooters Hill project renamed Helsha View and replace them with 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom units in keeping with the approval of the Shooters Hill Joint Venture Committee to maintain financial viability of the project and optimize the highest and best use of the land. There is also the recommendation from Cabinet. Well, there's also the approval of Cabinet for the recommendation of the Project Steering Committee for the improvement of emergency communication system in Jamaica project, which is funded by the Japan International Cooperation Agency, and they have been approved to proceed with implementation of the said project with present technical and functional design specifications. Cabinet also gave approval through specific policy directives that would declare the boundaries of the cockpit country protected area, as well as the environmental permits related to Special Mining Lease 173 to be issued to Naranda Bauxite Partner 2 under the Natural Resources Conservation Authority Act 1991. We also got the approval of Cabinet for the Government of Jamaica United Nations Development Program Global Environment Facility Project valued at $49 million US dollars, entitled Conserving Biodiversity and Reducing Land Degradation using an Integrated Approach, to be implemented over a 6-year period commencing in the 2022-2023 financial year. Cabinet also approved the government's co-financing commitment in kind and cash to the project of US $43.1 million and the provision of the requisite fiscal space in the 2022-2023 financial year and forward years to facilitate implementation of project activities. We also got the approval of Cabinet for the National Land Agency to acquire approximately 96 parcels of land with 10 structures with an estimated area of approximately 57,343 square meters in the parish of St. Catherine and Kingston and St. Andrew, utilizing the provision of the Land Acquisition Act. The parcels of land were needed for the Government of Jamaica's capital expenditure program being implemented by the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, acting through the National Works Agency, and the location boundaries which correspond with approximately 50,000 square meters of lands. Cabinet also gave approval for the Ministry of Finance and Public Service to finance the acquisition of these lands in the amount of $1.2 billion as a pre-investment cost. Establishment of an interministerial committee. Cabinet also gave approval for the establishment of an interministerial committee on matters relating to Jamaica's cyber domain. The committee will serve as a centralized mechanism for coordinating the sharing of views among stakeholders in the public and private sectors. The establishment of the committee became necessary as the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in organizations, both public and private, having to rapidly transition to cyberspace using technology systems to provide goods and services to consumers to reduce the effects of the economic fallout. We also got the approval of Cabinet for the purchase of 10.33 acres of lands being part of the land comprised in Certificate of Title, Volume 1478, Folio 652 of the Registrar Book of Titles by the Factories Corporation of Jamaica for the provision of parking as part of the Morant Bay Urban Center at a value of $90 million from Stanton Estates Limited. There was also the approval by Cabinet of the tabling of the Jamaica Teaching Council Act, and you would have noted that this tabling took place in previous weeks in the Houses of Parliament. Cabinet also received reports from the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission for the years ended 31st of March 2018 and the 31st of March 2019. We also received annual report and audited financial statements of the Montego Bay Convention Center for the financial year 2018-2019, the National Health Fund for 2020-2021, and the Montego Bay Metro Company for the financial year 2009-2010. There was also annual reports from the Registrar General's Department, which included audited financial statements for 2019-2020. Cabinet also approved contracts for the Greater Mandeville Water Supply Improvement Project, Phase 1B3, Hopetown Road to Waltham Road Transition Main Replacement in Manchester in the amount of $84,157,000 by the National Water Commission to the Jamaica Drip Irrigation Limited. There was also the approval of the contract for the renewal of the Microsoft Enrollment for Education Solutions, EES, in the amount of $1 million to Innova Solutions Limited. We also saw the approval of the award of a contract to undertake renovation works for office spaces located at 21 Dominica Drive, Kingston, in the amount of $253 million by the Accountant General's Department to MLO Services, and also the award of a contract for the construction of 200 two-bedroom and one-bedroom detached units and 50 service lots with the associated site works at Luana Gardens 4, Phase 3, St. Elizabeth, in the amount of $1.9 million by the Housing Agency of Jamaica Limited to Marshall's Construction Company Limited. We also saw the approval of the award of contract for the construction of 142 semi-detached, 2-story, 2-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, and 6 standalone housing units on 5.6 hectares of land at Reed's Penn St. Catherine in the amount of $1.7 billion. This includes provisional sums and contingencies by the Housing Agency of Jamaica to NF Barnes Construction and Equipment Company Limited. We also saw the approval of the award of a contract in the amount of $77 million to Pyramid Jamaica Consulting Engineers for the provision of construction supervision services for the Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project of the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. And also, Cabinet approved the contract for the supply and installation of pumps and pump houses at the Ebony Park Spring Plain Agri Park in the amount of $8 million, which includes interest. And that was given to Champion Industrial Equipment and Supplies Limited. We also saw the approval of the contract for the installation of pipelines, fittings, meters, and the construction of farm access roads, drains, and flood protection works in Bridge Pen, Amity Hall, St. Catherine for the Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project of the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, and this is of a value of $12.8 million to M&M Jamaica Limited. We also saw Cabinet approving the contract for the award, follow-on contract for the procurement of 200,000 blank passports for the existing version 2013 design in the amount of $1.1 million to the Canadian Banknote Company Limited. Cabinet also approved the award of contract for the procurement of 32, I think that may need correction, but it approved the award of contracts for firefighters' protective clothing for the Jamaica Fire Brigade in the amount of $114 million. The number that I quoted earlier is incorrect, so we'll have to correct that. And we saw the approval of a contract by Cabinet to eLearning Limited for the provision of 13,500 tablets for an amount not exceeding $2.8 million, inclusive of general consumption tax, to Royal Computers and Accessories Limited. Also, the approval of the award of a contract for the provision of blank certified copies of vital records security paper was approved for a period of 3 years in the amount of $614,000 to Veritas GmbH. We also saw the award of a contract, the approval of the award of a contract for the digitization of vital records, which includes birth, marriage, death, and deed poll. And this was a consultancy at the Registrar General's Department in the amount of $4.1 million, inclusive of GCT, to Fujitsu Jamaica Limited. We saw also the approval of a contract for the award for the modernization and upgrade of elevators at the Bank of Jamaica in the amount of $1.1 million to Jamaica Electrical Mechanical Engineers Limited, and also the approval of a contract to be awarded for the installation, commissioning, and maintenance of closed-circuit television surveillance at the Horizon Adult Remand Center and the Department of Correctional Services Head Office for $125 million, and this was approved for the benefit of King Alarm Systems Limited. We also saw the approval of an award of contract for the acquisition of satellite communication services for the maritime, well, let us not, that one is not supposed to be there. Can we go further up? Cabinet also approved the award of contract for Lot 1 of the procurement of, my apologies. And there ended the Cabinet decisions over the last 4 weeks. And Naomi, we can now take questions from members of the media. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Robert Nesta Morgan, Minister without portfolio here at the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for information. may I remind members of the media who are on our Zoom platform that it is the Zoom webinar. So in order to ask a question and to be able to speak, you would have to, when prompted, and we have been prompting, to join as a panelist. And so if you have questions, please join as a panelist. And we ask now that you raise your hands to ask questions of the minister, and we'll be able to accommodate those questions. Immediately I see some hands going up. So Minister, we go right over to Ms. Kimone Francis. Again, we ask that you remind us of the media house that you represent and ask the minister your questions. Kimone, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Naomi. Kimone Francis from the Gleaner. Minister, questions now from Jamaican students in Ukraine are having visa challenges. Is the government prepared to use diplomatic channels to assist? And who funded Prime Minister Andrew Holness's trip to the Bahamas last month for the reopening of Sandals Royal Bahamian Resort?
Thank you very much, Kimon. So as it relates to the issue of the Ukraine, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been working very hard with our partners, both the Ukrainian government and other partners in Europe, to assist our students there. I think some context need to be placed on this issue. The students who are in Ukraine are actually students who are pursuing private studies. So they are not students who were given scholarship through the state or students who have benefited from government sponsorship. So that's one. The second point is that through the efforts of the ministry, we have been working with our overseas services in Berlin to try and make contact with as many of them as possible. The fact of the matter is, Jamaica, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, was not aware of the quantity, and what we have had to be doing is finding out from other students in Ukraine to tell us, help us identify some of the other students who are there, because many of them never registered with any of our consulates or embassies. But the good news is that they don't need a visa to transit through Germany to come to Jamaica. And I think if you're transiting and you're leaving within 24 hours, you do not need a visa. So there is a good opportunity for them to exit Ukraine when the need arises and reach Jamaica safely or reach another third country. The other thing I want to tell you, and I had a conversation with the Minister of Foreign Affairs this morning, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, is that part of the challenge that the students may be having is not related to Jamaica's actions or inactions, but related to their status as students within the Ukraine. And we've been trying to work with our Ukrainian partners to see how we can come to some arrangement where if the students do leave, their studies are not disrupted or halted. So there have been tremendous efforts by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs through the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith to work with the students. We have about 42 students there to create a situation where if they need to leave, they can leave unhindered through Germany without a Shenzhen visa, and also to try to see how we can work with the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian universities through our representatives to see what can be done as it relates to their studies if they have to leave. As it relates to your second question about who funded the Prime Minister's trip, the trip was funded by the hotel, which is Sandals Resorts International. The only cost that the government bore was, I think, about $380 US for per diem. Do we have another question from another journalist?
Thank you so much, Minister. Let's go to Mr. Edmund Campbell. Good morning, Edmund.
Good morning. Morning, Naomi. Morning, Minister.
Morning,
Minister,
Edmund.
my first question, I'll just ask 3 questions and then hope I'll get an opportunity to do follow-ups.
Can you ask 2 first and then we'll allow a third later on? Can we do that?
Okay, all right, no problem.
Thank you.
Minister, Jamaica's Corruption Perception Index score as you would know by now, remains at 44 out of 100 as reported by Transparency International in its latest publication. In fact, the Transparency International argued that there was no improvement in the score because there was, and I quote now, significant resistance to anti-corruption reforms from many politicians in the country, end of quote. What's the government's response to this latest CPI score and the fact that Jamaica remains the 5th most corrupt Caribbean island? The second question is, what accounts for the seeming special treatment given to spectators, vaccinated or unvaccinated, attending horse racing events at Caymanas Park, as against other persons who have been barred from attending other sporting events? I'm trying to find out if there's a policy incoherence, Minister, here.
So, for your first question, could you clarify what is the name of the report, Edmund?
No, I'm talking about Transparency International.
What's the name of the report? What's the name of the report? The name of the report?
No, it's the Corruption Perception Index.
Okay, thank you. So you're saying to me, at the beginning of your question, you asked me about the score based on this index. Then you went on to conclude that Jamaica is the 5th most corrupt country in the region. But how can a perception then reach a conclusion like that? So maybe how I would rephrase your statement is that based on Transparency International Perception Index, Jamaica is perceived as the 5th most corrupt country in the region. So we can settle that one. As it relates to the statement that Jamaican politicians are resisting reforms, we can look at the history. Between 2016 and now, I think Jamaica has seen the most significant transformation from a legislative perspective, from a funding perspective of our anti-corruption institutions. Remember, we promulgated the Integrity Commission Act, and we also created a system where we had an independent body to oversee the Integrity Commission. And we have consistently, as was admitted by the Integrity Commission, continued to provide the funding that is necessary for the Commission to do their work. There has been no hindrance by the government of any anti-corruption investigation by any constituted authority. You'd also note that significant work has been done to empower MOCA as an independent entity, and that came through Parliament to allow it to do investigations. I do not see, and I sit in the Parliament, and based on conversations and knowledge that I have of what takes place in the Parliament, I have not seen any resistance by any member of Parliament, at least not on the government side, to the fight against corruption. What I see is that, as the law stipulates, entities are empowered to make recommendations. And the Parliament of Jamaica, which is elected by the citizens of Jamaica democratically, has the power to assess those recommendations. So if it is that someone makes a recommendation and the duly elected Parliament of Jamaica does not agree with all the recommendations, that cannot then be perceived as being a hindrance in the fight against corruption. Because what it would then suggest, that any entity in Jamaica that makes a recommendation to the Parliament is obligated to accept that recommendation. I do not know in a democratic society if that would be a reasonable conclusion to make. Parliament has a committee that accepts recommendations, analyzes recommendations, consults with other members in the House, citizens, civil society groups, and then eventually will come to a reasonable conclusion as to whether to accept the recommendations or not. I see no evidence of hindrance, at least not under this administration. As it relates to the question of special treatment for horse racing, I wasn't aware that horse racing fans were getting special treatment. So I want you to allow me to consult with Minister Grange and Minister Mackenzie to seek clarity on your assessment that they're being given special treatment. I don't want to comment and give you false information, so I will ask that you allow me to consult with her and the Honorable Minister to see what the arrangements are for Caymanas Park, so that I can get back to you with an answer on that. Do we have, I'm going to take a third question, Edmund, but I would love if you'd allow another journalist to ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We do have other journalists who have their hands up. Let's go to Gavin Riley, and then we'll go to Prince Moore.
Good morning, Gavin Riley from Our Today.
Hi, Gavin.
Minister, my question is in relation to the announcement you made earlier about the $114 million contract in relation to the procurement of protective gear for members of the Jamaica Fire Brigade. What is the government's timeline for the materialization of the protective gear procurement?
Let me see if I can go back to that contract. Well, what usually happens in the process of procurement is when it reaches cabinet, it means that the process would have gone through the cabinet's infrastructure committee, which is basically the committee that pre-vets contracts before they go to cabinet. It means that the process would have fulfilled the procurement guidelines. So you would have had tender, you would have had initially an approval for budgeting, and then you would have had a tender, you would have had an assessment of the tender, you'd have had a selection of a contractor, and then that goes to cabinet. So what that means is now that cabinet has given approval, we can expect very quickly, and I am not aware of the nature of the production of this equipment, if it is available, if it is shelf ready, or the company has to now go and produce them. But what that means is that this is a confirmed contract, which means that within very short order, I do not expect it to take months, the firefighters will be able to get this equipment. But what I can do for you is I can consult with the Ministry of Local Government to give you more information as it relates to whether this equipment is shelf ready or the company will have to go and manufacture them. I think that would be the only challenge in me advising you as to the time it will take for the equipment to reach Jamaica.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Gavin. Let's go to Prince Moore. Prince?
Good morning. Prince Moore from Radio Jamaica. Minister, there have been calls for the removal of gas tax as well as complaints about rising prices. Is there anything that the government can do to cushion the effects of this on consumers?
Thank you, Prince. And I want to thank you for the opportunity, because one of the biggest concerns of primarily the Prime Minister and members of the Cabinet, as well as the Ministry of Finance, is the rising prices within the world, which is contributing to rising prices in Jamaica. If you look at the global oil market, I think oil is now at approximately $90 per barrel. A few months ago, it was under $60 per barrel. So there are many factors operating on the local economy and causing inflation to drive. We're an island. We do not produce hydrocarbons, so we have to import hydrocarbons. The global trade system has been disrupted, and there are other associated costs and speculation within the global market that has led to an increase in prices generally, and also an increase in oil prices. As it relates to the gas tax, I don't know if, so there are several revenue measures associated with petroleum. So there is no homogeneous gas tax on petroleum. But as it relates to taxation of commodities, I think that's a conversation that we're going to have with the Ministry of Finance, as the Ministry of Finance is where tax policy is executed, and the Minister of Finance is probably the most competent person to pronounce on government tax policy. But what I want to offer this morning is for the public to be aware that the government is acutely concerned about the increasing prices globally, which is having an impact on prices locally. And if you would have looked over the last couple weeks, you'd have seen the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Agriculture raising concerns about things such as the rise in chicken prices, about the rise in bank fees, and also the impact that floods have had on our farmers, which also may lead to increases in prices at the local market. So it is something that in the corridors of government and at the highest level, led by the Prime Minister, it is being discussed, and there are constant discussions about what to do to assist local consumers to deal with what is, to some extent, an unprecedented period in our global markets that is impacting them.
Thank you, Minister. Let's go to Vanessa Silvera.
Good morning, Minister. Good morning, Naomi.
Morning, Vanessa.
When can the country expect an update on the COVID measures which expire in a number of days? And 2, is the Get Every Legal Gun campaign being classified as an amnesty? If it is, when does this amnesty end?
All right, so usually on the closer on the expiration of the COVID measures, the Prime Minister usually makes a presentation in Parliament, or we would have a COVID press conference. What I can assure you is that it usually happens before the measures expire. So before the measures expire, you will expect a presentation by the Prime Minister and whether in Parliament or at a press conference on it. Thank you for the opportunity, though, because COVID continues to be a going concern within our society. We encourage persons to get vaccinated, to continue to wear their masks, to continue to sanitize, and to continue to social distance as much as possible. We've come a very long way. The government has invested billions of dollars in the protection of citizens, with investments in the healthcare sector, with investments in the procurement of vaccines. We do not have a shortage of vaccines. We do not have a shortage of vaccination sites, and the vaccine has been proven to be one of the most effective mechanisms to protect your health against COVID. So we are, at every opportunity, the government is appealing to citizens to get vaccinated. The second question that you ask is whether or not the Get Every Gun is an amnesty. I did not hear that announcement. What I heard was the Prime Minister encouraging law-abiding citizens and persons who have the best interests of Jamaica at heart to provide information so that the police and law enforcement can find these guns and they will get a reward. This is a template that has been used many years. Crime Stop uses the same template. If there's a crime, and Crime Stop advertises that if you call, you don't have to reveal your identity, and you provide information that leads to the solving of a crime, you will get a reward. It's the same formula. And I think the government has been very strategic in its approach to crime fighting. You would have seen efforts by the security forces, efforts by the administration to continue to evolve the strategy, to continue to evolve the plan, to add more elements to it so that it can be more effective. The biggest challenge we have, as the Prime Minister has constantly said, and the Minister of National Security and the security forces have said, is guns, gunmen, and gangs. And we are trying to get every citizen in Jamaica to join the fight to get the guns, the gunmen, and the gangs. And with this new program, you have an further incentive to do it, which is a reward.
Thank you, Minister. Let's go to Ricardo Brooks.
Thank you, Naomi. Good morning, Minister.
Morning, Ricardo.
two questions quickly. The new vaccination campaign the Prime Minister promised, when can we expect it to be rolled out? And two, there have been reports that the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are to visit Jamaica. Can you confirm that? And if they are to visit Jamaica, what's the price tag for that trip and at whose cost is it?
Thank you very much, Ricardo. So the new vaccination campaign, Prime Minister hinted at it a few weeks ago, but I can assure you that in very short order, the Prime Minister and or the Minister of Health, the Honorable Dr. Chris Tufton, will give you more information on that. As it relates to what I see in the media as a visit to Jamaica by the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall, is it? Cambridge. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Those matters reside in the Governor General's office. So I have seen the media reports, but I will suggest to you that you approach the Governor General's office for any further information on that matter, as that is where it properly resides. Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you, Minister. I see where Kimon Francis has a follow-up, so we'll allow...
Was Kimon before Edmund? Because remember,
yes, Kimon was
promised.
before
Okay,
Edmund.
thank you.
Indeed.
Hi, Kimon.
Hi again. Minister, I just want to take you back to the point before raising the question that I have. At Caymanas Park, there is nothing in place to decipher between unvaccinated or to ascertain the vaccination status of patrons. I believe what my colleague was asking is what account.
I can't hear.
The policy there.
I can't hear you. I think there's something with your audio. But I think, if I'm correct, you're saying that there's no vaccination verification at Caymanas?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So I'm asking, or what Edmund was asking, what accounts for the inconsistency in policy where Caymanas is wide open, but fans can't go to...
As I said to you earlier, I cannot comment on something that I'm not aware of. So I'm asking if you would allow me to speak to Minister Grange and also Minister Mackenzie to get the facts on the situation, because I really was unaware of what you're saying. So I would crave your indulgence to allow me to get that information. I would not want to comment and give incorrect information.
Thank you, Minister. And then we go to Edmund to wrap up with his follow-up question. Edmund?
Yes, Minister. Minister, you spoke extensively to the question of the work that the government has been doing in relation to passing legislation and fighting corruption. But the point I'm trying to make, Minister, is that the Integrity Commission has, in its last 3 annual reports, they have made a raft of recommendations to assist the Commission to better able to fight corruption in Jamaica. And to this day, none of those measures that have been recommended in those annual reports have been implemented. That's one. The next question I want to ask, Minister, in relation to a comment made by the Minister of Agriculture in Parliament recently. I think he signaled that the government was contemplating or considering the removal of the import duty on lead quarters. Can you give us an update on that as to whether or not a decision has been made as yet?
Thank you very much, Edmund. As I said to you earlier, the mere presence of a recommendation does not obligate a parliament generally to adopt said recommendations. But I am wondering, are you saying that of every single recommendation that the Integrity Commission has made, not one recommendation has been approved, adopted, enacted? I don't know if that is correct, because I can't hear Edmund. Edmund, go ahead, Edmund.
No, Minister, I'm saying I'm not aware of any of those recommendations that have been included in their annual reports that they have been implemented.
So the recommendation for more financial assistance to the Integrity Commission, the recommendation for the ability of the Commission to get more employees, those recommendations were not adopted.
The financial assistance, those were recommendations. Those were asked.
But you said that no recommendation has been adopted.
The recommendation or any issue to do with financial support. That would have taken place at the outset when the commission was being established.
Okay. So let me try to say it in a different way. The government has been very purposeful in trying to equip the Integrity Commission with the resources to do its job. The government has also been very clear that we will never impede or hinder investigation of corruption. And your paper has reported on several occasions where accusations have been raised against individuals and entities. The Prime Minister and the government has taken action. So that is the context of where we are. So there's no hindrance. We have not taken the OCG to court as a previous administration did. We have not prevented the Integrity Commission or any constituted authority to investigate anything. When the Auditor General made our recommendations, this government implemented them. This government followed the recommendations that were made. Now, onto the other matter. So I've laid that context where you are suggesting that because the Parliament has not accepted all the recommendations of the entity, then that means that politicians are being a hindrance to the anti-corruption fight. I don't know if a reasonable person would come to that conclusion, because the evidence shows that this administration from 2016 has done more in the fight against corruption than any other administration in the history of Jamaica, with the passage of laws, with the accountability that exists within the executive and within the government generally, with the resources that have been given to not just the Integrity Commission, but also MOCA. So you have to compare what used to happen before, what is happening now. And if you do that comparison, you'll realize that this administration has done more to fight corruption than any other in our independent history. Thank you very much, Edmund.
Thank you so much, Minister. I believe we've exhausted the follow-up questions and the questions at hand. I see Kimon with her hand up, but I believe that was from a previous question. Am I correct, Kimon?
No, I have a question. I wasn't allowed to ask the question after I made the point.
I'm sorry.
We're sorry,
I'm sorry.
Kimon.
We didn't realize. We thought your follow-up was the question you were asking. But you may go ahead with the question, Kimon.
Right. Minister, when will the report on the investigation into the alleged mistreatment of Shanique Armstrong at Spanish Town Hospital be made public? This was a commitment made by you last year. I've not heard anything.
So I'm sorry, Kimon, could you help us?
I heard the question. I heard the question.
Your mic keeps going out.
So at the point of, and I was standing right here when I said that I don't see a reason why the report could not be made public. And the Minister of Health also intimated, but then a legal process began. So the intervening act in that commitment was a legal process. So if it is that there is a alleged incident taking place and the public authority does their investigation, and then that matter now becomes a legal matter, it also means that all the correspondence, all the investigations internally, all the findings of the public authority are now subject to that legal process. So it would be highly inappropriate and maybe even prejudicial to the legal process for the government now to release the information that is now material to that process that is under consideration. So our approach as a government has always been to give the people the information, but we also have to be restrained by the legal processes that take place from time to time within the society. So the answer to your question is yes, it was the intention, but then a legal process kicked in, and we have to honor the integrity and the authority of the legal process and the courts. Thank you, Kimon.
All right, thank you, everyone. I see no further hands up on our Zoom platform. May I thank all members of the media for joining us for this week's post-cabinet media briefing. We will be having them weekly, and so we'll see you again next Wednesday. Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and good morning.